Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between. I'm a clinical psychologist and medium, and you know what we explore here if you've been listening to me for a while. Today, I have a ghost story. I've had a little hiatus from ghost stories, but they're back. And what's so amazing about today's ghost story, first of all, if you're new to listening to the podcast, ghost stories are your stories. They're the stories that you've had, the amazing signs and synchronicities that have shown up in your life, the premonitions, the loved ones who have visited. I love hearing those stories. So if you have a ghost story to share, go to dramyrobbins.com. There's an area where you can share your story. Just make sure it's long enough for a podcast. So about 1 to 2 type pages, which will make for about a 3 to 5 minute podcast. So what's amazing about today's podcast is I don't listen to the stories. I don't read the stories typically before I read the stories for you all, because I want the stories to feel really authentic, and I want me reading it I want me to have an authentic response to reading it. But today's is completely aligned with other podcasts, another podcast that I have this month, which is amazing because it's not a typical ghost story. It's actually a story about a baby communicating with her mom before she's born. 2 babies communicating with their mom before they're born. And my podcast this month, one of my podcasts this month, is all about spirit babies communicating with their parents before they come into a human body. So the synchronicities are just always there. With that, I bring you today's ghost story.
We need at our table of awareness the logician, but equally we need the intuitive, we need the mystic.
I almost died. I was allowed to go to the very precipice of death, of life and death, and look over the edge. And I was allowed to behold what was there and allowed to come back. Most people aren't.
When we talk about being aligned with ourself or being aligned with our soul or hearing our higher self, that's really what we're talking about, is being connected to that divine part of ourself, that light-filled part of us that is connected to God energy, that is connected to everybody here and every experience we've ever had.
If more doctors, more professionals can open up to use intuitive gifts in their work, that's really important.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, mediumship, near-death experiences, consciousness, and what it all means. I bring you today's ghost story. My husband and I moved from Portland, Maine to New Hampshire in 2018. That February, when my husband and I made the decision to start our family, we didn't realize it could take a few months. He was starting to lose hope, and on our visit in April to our favorite city, Portland, Maine, we met, fell in love, and got married in Portland and lived there for 5 years. We experienced something together that would change our lives forever. We had attended a concert with our favorite band, Badfish, and the next morning went to a foot soak spa. After sitting in the waiting room for our soak, we noticed people holding a free prayer sign. Once we were in the soak room, my husband suggested we go over and ask them to pray with us. I didn't know what we would pray for, and he said, "A baby." We are not religious, but spiritual, so this of course touched my heart. There were 5 of us in the circle, and each person said something special, but it felt like there was another circle above us of our loved ones. I cannot describe it. It's just something we knew. We walked away knowing something very powerful had just happened. In the next few weeks, we carried on in our regular day-to-day life, and what would you know it, I was pregnant. We were over the moon. I would have conceived the night prior to that prayer. Amazing. I was about 8 weeks pregnant when I had the first dream with our baby. I now know it was a visit from my daughter. Around the time we bought our house, someone was trying to build a soccer facility on the 11.8 acres next to us, owned by the town, and on this little river. By March, the deal was dead due to environmental reasons. In May, June, when I had the dream, I was slightly confused by the details that pertain to this. However, almost 2 years later, this whole dream has new meaning. A few background facts. I was 8 weeks pregnant and the gender of the baby was determined, but we were not finding out until the baby was born. In this dream, I was on a red plaid tablecloth, like a blanket, on my front field with a little girl. She was a baby because I had to change her diaper, but she had long hair. We were working on stuff for the town meetings where the land next door was in question again. This little girl didn't say anything. We spoke telepathically, and she said, "We get to grow old together." And I said, "No, that's me and my husband." Then she said, "We get to grow up together." And I was like, "Nope, I'm already grown." Obviously not true, but that was how I responded. Thinking about it after was where the weird part happens. There was a sign in the room that was going to be the babies that said, "Grow old along with me. The best is yet to be." Knowing how that little girl was in my dream, and knowing my daughter now, she had to have been a year in that dream. I know it was her. It looked just like her. And in November 2020, someone new was trying to develop the land next door, and I had to fight the town all over again. The second dream I had while pregnant with her was closer to delivery date. 36 weeks pregnant, and I delivered at 39 on the dot. We knew it would be Quinn if a boy and Piper if a girl. Like I said, we weren't finding out gender until baby made their earthbound arrival. So in my dream, I was pregnant and said to my belly, "How are you doing in there, little Piper girl?" And then I corrected myself and said, "We don't know what we're having. Who knows? Who am I kidding? Of course it's my Piper girl." And then lo and behold, it was indeed my Piper girl. My daughter, Piper Jean, who I constantly discussed while pregnant and driving home from work, how cool it would be if she was the first baby of 2020. And she was the first baby of 2020 in Concord, New Hampshire, and the fourth in New Hampshire, born 1/1/2020 at 5:31 a.m. My youngest is even crazier. I heard her perfectly clear as day saying, "I'm ready, Mommy," a week before I found out I was pregnant. At 12 weeks, they couldn't find a heartbeat. I knew she was okay and begged her to help. I heard her saying, "I'm trying, Mommy." And there she was sitting perfectly still, heart beating away. She sent me sign after sign. On May 18th, 2021, I found out I was pregnant. At that time, I knew her first or middle name would be Grace. On May 20th, 2 days later, I turned on my Spotify playlist and the song Grace came on. Then Medicine Rising, Appalachia, with the line Walking with Grace. That evening, my husband and I went to dinner to celebrate. We went to a place on Lake Winnipesaukee overlooking the lake. My husband sits down and goes, "What does the back of that boat say?" I was like, "What do you mean? What does it say?" I looked out the window and the back of the boat's name was Grace. We both teared up. 2 months before she was born, we had to get a new car. Old car, lots of miles, not great in the snow. And I asked the universe and Hazel for the exact car down to the price. When we pulled out of the lot to test the drive, my husband said, "My dream bike," which was a motorcycle, just drove by. This was November in New Hampshire. Street bikes are usually tucked away for the winter at this point. On the way back to the lot, the one sign we saw said Grace Evangelical Church. I knew that car was ours. We are both huge Sublime fans, and so when we went to pick up the car and drive it home, my husband told me I should drive it. I got in the car, and it being a new vehicle to us, I went to turn the radio station on and ended up changing the station instead. What song was playing? What I Got by Sublime. My husband's best friend passed away at the age of 28. He has shown himself many times to us, and he was also a huge Sublime fan. When we went to set up the Bluetooth in the car, the names and phones had been connected to a bunch of random letters and numbers, except for one, Tyler. That was my husband's best friend's name. Of course, all the names in the world that car could have connected to, it was his. This car had only one owner prior to us. I did 2 past life regressions while pregnant. She kept saying, there may be 2. I was so confused because I knew I had 1 confirmed baby. Come to find out, my sister-in-law, who we never thought would have a kid, was pregnant and due a month after us. There was the 2, sister and cousins. She then told me she may try and come early. She tried to come 1/4/22 at 37 weeks pregnant. I got to 5 centimeters and things stalled out. I went another 2.5 weeks before she was born on 1/20/2022. I also had to heal 2 past lives during those 2.5 weeks. We communicated telepathically during most of my pregnancy. Again, I didn't know it was what her gender, but I knew she was a girl. I asked for a specific sign to see her name since it wasn't very common. Hazel. I had a call through a mutual friend. I had never met this woman before. I told her I was pregnant and she said, "Oh, with a girl?" And I said, I don't know for sure, but I suspect. She swore I said girl. She is a very gifted intuitive. The next day, I logged into Facebook and had barely scrolled down when there, clear as day, was her name. Sometimes it's incredible the things Spirit shows us and shares with us, and I'm constantly blown away. Sending your daughter twice to you in a dream, communications with your unborn child, and multiple signs. Thank you for allowing me to share my story. And I am so excited. Actually, I don't read the ghost stories typically before I kind of skim them quickly, but I don't like to read them because I like if there's like emotion behind them for you all to experience that with me. But what's amazing is, as you know, I haven't recorded a ghost story in a really long time. And the ghost story in which the podcast in which this will fall right around is a podcast about spirit babies. So it's just mind blowing to me again, how everything kind of comes together. So I love this story and thank you for sharing it. And if you have a ghost story to share, please reach out and share your ghost story. Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.